During the end of 1941, the Imperial Japanese war machine got hungry and bit the then resting giant at Pearl Harbor. Soon after that, the resting giant USA awoke and showed Japan its true industrial might. The Pacific Front was now open. How did these two nations' navy compare? And why did the US Navy win in the end? This is the story of the Pacific Front. For the Japanese, their main strategy was Kantai-Kessen, also known as the decisive battle doctrine. The strategy involved forcing the US into one all-out battle. This basically dictated future ship productions of the Navy and the outcome of the war. Japanese aircraft carriers were very attack-focused. They had light armor and superb speed. The light aircraft that they were equipped with were capable of a large striking range. One of the most famous planes, the Mitsubishi Zero, had a range of 3,000 kilometers. In contrast, the American-made Mustang had a range of 1,770 kilometers only. But due to design flaws, many Japanese planes exploded easily under enemy fire. Overall, they were still much better than what the US Navy Air Force had at that time. The core of the Japanese fleet consisted of battleships. Most famously, the Yamato class was a class of super battleships that were designed to be able to engage multiple capital ships at the same time. It is the biggest battleship of all time, and during World War II, it was also the largest ship of any navy. The Yamato class was also equipped with 9 46cm main batteries, which remains as the largest guns ever placed on ships. During the final stages of the war, the Japanese grew desperate and used suicide attacks with their kamikaze pilots. On the opposite side of the war, the US Navy's strategy was to avoid an all-out battle by spreading themselves out. Their ships were built in line with that strategy. US aircraft carriers had larger tonnage than their Japanese counterparts and could act as independent striking platforms, capable of launching more than 48 planes at notice. Though designed to maximize plane capacity, US aircraft carriers such as the Enterprise could withstand heavy damage. Good anti-aircraft guns were also a critical part of American carriers that the Japanese didn't have. American battleships were built to be fast, able to match the speed of aircraft carriers and cruisers. This meant that they could keep up with escaping enemy ships. Gun size remained fairly standard at 16-inch or 40 cm main batteries on most ships. Not too far into the war though, the US stopped the production of many battleships in favor of constructing more aircraft carriers, unlike the Japanese, who boosted battleship production instead. Ultimately, it was the flawed decisive battle doctrine that felled the Japanese Empire. Due to the influence of the Russo-Japanese War, during World War II, Japan's main strategy was to crush the Americans in one massive battle in Japanese water after a war of attrition to weaken American forces. But instead of getting baited, the Americans used the war of attrition on the Japanese themselves through island hopping. By capturing key islands in the Pacific, the Japanese were cut off from the islands located behind the American-occupied islands, losing resources and men. Island hopping resulted in massive naval battles over the islands. Also, the Japanese had multiple terrible assumptions during the war. The first mistake was believing that aircraft carriers were a support role, not meant to be the core of the fleet. This led to them wasting lots of money and time building their big battleships. Americans had decided early on that carriers and submarines were the new face of war, and fully engaged into that type of warfare. Submarines wreaked havoc upon Japanese shipping lines, but they could never properly respond. Their second major mistake was underestimating their opponents in most engagements. During the Battle of Midway, they highly underestimated the US, and as a result, lost multiple cruisers and 4 of their main carriers, including Akagi and Kaga. Lastly, it was their devotion to the Kantai-Kessen that led to their downfall. The Americans could easily outbuild the Japanese 3-1 and was doing so by the middle of the war. This placed the Japanese at a significant disadvantage, yet many leaders in Japan stuck to the Kantai-Kessen. Admiral Ukagi once said, "I wonder why they don't give enough consideration to attacking enemy elements easy to destroy, instead of always seeking a decisive battle." The Americans were able to take note of this major flaw and beat the Japanese in the Pacific Front.